Well, you came back for another episode. This old hot rod stuff's kind of addictive, isn't it? We've got a good one for you this week. We found an N.O.S. Craftsman lathe from 1972. So Puddin' Creek, you're telling us like you found an abandoned Sears distribution center, and inside that distribution center you found a brand new Craftsman lathe still in a crate from 1972? No, it's not that N.O.S. Oh, so you're telling us you found like maybe in an estate sale a Craftsman lathe that was ordered in 1972 and it's still in the wood crate, the guy never opened it, and you're going to open it for us today on this video? No, it's not that N.O.S. either. It's not scenario number 1, and it's not scenario number 2. It's scenario number 3, which I'm about to tell you about, but scenario number 3 is pretty wild. There is not a wood shipping crate involved, but there is a beautiful handmade wood platform, and it is an N.O.S. Craftsman lathe from 1972. Let me tell you the whole story. It all started one Saturday morning. I was having breakfast with a little woman and a kiddo, and the kiddo is explaining to me how she just watched a YouTube video on framing roofs, and she's pretty sure she could frame up her own roof on her chicken house.
I'm going to get my tape measure, I'm going to string it across the top of the thing, and then I'm going to mark out the halfway point, and I'm going to put my stick, and then I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to string it across, and then I'm going to put my halfway point, and then I'm going to put my stick, and then I'm going to take my 2x4 and I'm going to connect the sticks, and then I'm going to cut the pieces of the 2x4 however long I want, and then I'm going to go boop, 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 and then I'm going to do that on the same time, go boop, 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 and then I'm going to put my pieces of stuff that I want, and I'm going to nail it in, boop, 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 boop. I sounds like a 2-hour job to me.
Well, after all that, I made a mental note to myself to switch her coffee to decaf. I excused myself from the breakfast table and sat down to look through Facebook Marketplace for a few minutes. What do I find? An ad that says Antique Craftsman Metal Lathe. Now that picture doesn't look like an antique at all. It looks like a full restoration. I get on the phone with the guy and he tells me, no, it's not been restored. As a matter of fact, it's never even been used. It's a brand new lathe from 1972. I tell the guy don't sell the lathe to anybody else. I'm getting in my truck right now and headed your direction. Now, Puddin' Creek Rod Shop's located in East Tennessee, but this lathe that's for sale is located in Shelby, North Carolina. That's a nice long drive. As I'm driving through the mountains, I'm thinking about the 1970s era of Sears and Craftsman tools when things were made in America.
We're at a Sears store to find out why Sears is where America shops.
If one of your Sears tools should happen to break, you bring it back, no questions.
My father has Craftsman tools. He put in the will who's going to get them, so no one fights over them.
Sears, where America shops.
Now, I finally make it to Shelby, North Carolina, and as I'm driving through their downtown, one of the first things I see is this giant mural of Earl Scruggs. And I think to myself, that's kind of odd. Earl Scruggs on the side of a building in Shelby, North Carolina. Then I come upon the Earl Scruggs Center. Now, I'm no Columbo, but I'm starting to put these clues together. The lathe seller is standing out in his front yard waiting on me as I pull into his driveway. The first thing I ask him is, hey buddy, is this the hometown of Earl Scruggs? He says it sure is. As a matter of fact, Earl Scruggs' old home place still stands here in Shelby, North Carolina. Now some of y'all are asking me, hey Puddin' Creek, who in the world is Earl Scruggs? Who is Earl Scruggs? Well, he's just half of the most famous duo in bluegrass music, Flatt and Scruggs, that's who he is. Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs.
Together again.
Oh yeah, like Fred and Ginger and Lester and Earl.
So we get the lathe back to Puddin' Creek Rod Shop, and man, it is a beauty. So how did it come to be that this lathe has never been used? Well, evidently, in 1972, this guy ordered this lathe from his local Sears store. He also ordered a couple of chucks and a whole batch of tooling to go with it. When it came in, evidently the guy was a woodworker. He built this beautiful wood base for it. He installed 4 ball swivel leveling feet, so it sits nice and level. He also wired up a switch in the base to turn the motor on and off. Then he mounted his new lathe to the fancy wood base he just built using 4 stainless steel bolts that he sanded and polished the heads up on so they look just like chrome bolts, just like we would do if we were building a hot rod. Then Well, this is where the story takes a twist. You're expecting me to say, then he set it up in his garage, or then he set it up in his basement. No, that's not what he did. Then he set it up in his living room. That's right. He evidently never bought this lathe to use. He bought it as a display piece. He bought it to make his own industrial art piece that he could enjoy every night when he came home from work, and he sat down in his big chair. He could look over at this beautiful Craftsman lathe on the hand-built base he built and just admire the beauty of it. The lathe sat in this guy's living room from 1972 for the rest of his life until he passed away. After he passed away, his widow, she couldn't bring herself to move it. It sat there for so many years, so she left it sitting right where he had it. And it was not until she was getting the house remodeled that the sheetrockers had put a piece of clear plastic over it, and they had put up new sheetrock in this living room, and they were about to do the sanding, and they warned her, "Ma'am, when we start sanding this sheetrock, your whole house is going to be filled with sheetrock dust, and it's going to get up under that piece of plastic, and it's going to ruin that little lathe." So she finally decided it was time to let the little lathe go. It's my understanding that she called up a neighbor. The neighbor came over and looked at it, made a deal to buy it with all the tooling. The neighbor listed it on Marketplace, and that's the guy I bought it from in Shelby, North Carolina. Now, this is the first little Craftsman lathe I have ever owned. I always thought they were just kind of one step above a toy, but this lathe is really well made for a hobby lathe. I'm really impressed. Let's take the chuck off of it, get an indicator, and put on the spindle. See how much spindle run out it has. That's the true test of how accurate a lathe will be. Let's use this Federal tenths indicator. Federal indicators are super accurate indicators, and this one measures in 1/10 of 1/1000th. 1/1000th of an inch is about the size of a human hair. I put the dial indicator on the spindle of the little Craftsman lathe, and I give the spindle a turn by hand. I'm seeing about 3/10 of run out. 3/10 of 1/1000th. In other words, 1/1000th is the size of a human hair. This spindle is accurate within 3/10 of that. For a little hobby lathe, that is super accurate. As a matter of fact, for a regular industrial grade lathe, that's pretty good. I'm blown away. Now, I know in the comments, one of you guys are going to say, "Hey, Puddin' Creek, I hope you didn't pay too much for that little lathe. You can buy those at Harbor Freight for $799. This is going to be my response when I read that comment. So here's the next mystery of this little lathe deal. When the guy ordered this lathe in 1972, he ordered all kinds of extra tool holders and chucks and centers, but he never used any of it. It's all still in the boxes, just like it was when it came from Sears, just with a little shelf wear on it. So did he order all this tooling, thinking that someday he might actually use the lathe and he would need the tooling? Or did he order the tooling and he planned on displaying it with the lathe, but once he got the base built, he decided it looked better just by itself? Who knows, but all this tooling came with it, and it's all brand new. Let's do a little unboxing and take a look. Now, this is called a dead center. This is used to turn shafts between centers. This one is called a screw center. You remove your 3-jaw chuck, and then you can insert this center in the spindle taper, screw a piece of wood on it, and use your little metal lathe to turn a piece of wood. Now, this is your tool holder. This is what we call a lantern post style tool holder. This is kind of old and antiquated and not very easy to set center on, so we won't be using this. I actually have a quick change tool post that we're going to machine the base plate for and adapt to use on this lathe. We're going to do that later in the video, so don't go anywhere. The lathe came with a full set of change gears. Only problem is they're die cast. I'm sure the die cast gears will be fine for this little tiny model size lathe. It's not like we're going to be shortening drive shafts on this lathe or resurfacing clutch plates. This is only going to be used for real small parts and small work. Now, all these tool holders are pretty cool that they're brand new and they're still in the box, but they all go with a lantern style tool post, and we're not going to use that style tool post or this style tool holder. Like I said before, we're going to adapt a quick change dovetail style tool post and tool holders to use on this lathe. We just need to remachine the base plate for it. We'll be doing that very shortly right here in the video. Now here is the 4-jaw independent chuck that he ordered to go with the lathe. Notice this says it's made in England. All the other parts with the lathe say made in USA. So I'm wondering possibly if these chucks were made by Pratt Bernard in England. Pratt Bernard would have been a huge chuck manufacturer in England in the 70s. Pratt Bernard was known to make really high quality lathe chucks. I don't know for a fact that these chucks were made by that company, but they are very well made. They're very nice pieces. If you know who made the chucks for Craftsman lathes in the 70s, leave us a note in the comments. I'm sure everyone would like to know. Now this box was for the 3-jaw universal chuck, but he put that chuck on the lathe when he set it up as a display piece back in 1972. So this is just an empty box with an extra set of hardened chuck jaws. Here's an oddball item that was just down in the box of tooling. It's Craftsman brand flints for your torch striker. They came in this little metal case. Does anybody remember Craftsman flints coming in a little metal case like this? I sure don't. Our friend who made the display piece also saved all the original paperwork that came new with the lathe. Here's the hang tag that would have been on the electric motor. Yes, it's a Craftsman electric motor. What else would it be? Okay, here's a fun item. Here's the bill from Sears. If you look here, the actual lathe itself cost $259. Each one of those tool holders only costs $3 or $4 or $5 a piece. That's pretty crazy. The total for the lathe and all the tool holders was $386. Looks like there was about $15 in tax on it and $6 shipping. How you like that? Grand total for this beautiful lathe, all the tooling, tax, and shipping was $408. And of course the date, 1972. I wonder what kind of truck he drove to pick it up from Sears when it came in.
Well, here it is, folks, the Inflation Fighter Special. The specially equipped sale price Chevy pickup that helps you fight inflation by working harder and lasting longer. You get all the standard features of the Chevy half-ton pickup. You specify V8 or 6. And as a bonus, you get a special seat with a 7-inch thick foam cushion, special paint stripe, chrome hubcaps, chrome front bumper, and you get the Inflation Fighter Special deal on it.
Wow, a 7-inch seat cushion and a chrome bumper? That is an Inflation Fighter deal. Wish we had some Inflation Fighter deals going on today. Now you're saying to yourself, hey Puddin' Creek, the 70s truck commercial was pretty cool. Unboxing all that tooling was a little boring, but we're going to give you a pass just because we like you. But are you going to do any work in this video? Are you going to do any actual work? Well, that's right. Break's over. Let's get it. Now, I had this little quick change tool holder left over from another small lathe I used to own. It's an import, and I know we don't like import on this channel, but we'll use it for now and keep an eye out for an Armstrong or some other made in USA tool holder. The only problem with this little quick change tool holder is the base plate, or T-nut some people call it. It's not the right size for the Craftsman lathe. You can see as I try to fit it in the slot that's in the compound rest on a little Craftsman lathe that it's way too small. As a matter of fact, it will almost pull out of the slot. That's not going to work. So we need to measure the slot and then make a little drawing so we can make a new T-nut from scratch. I think it's time to dust off and bust open this pack of note cards that came from Tom Hanna's shop. Who was Tom Hanna? Well, if you're into drag racing, you already know. But if you don't, I'll give you a little education on it. Tom Hanna was a fuel dragster driver in the 1960s, but he's better known for his craftsmanship in building aluminum-bodied and magnesium-bodied dragsters in the 60s and the 70s. He was known as Tom the Tin Man Hanna. So how did I end up with a pack of Tom's note cards? Well, when Tom passed away, I went to the auction of his shop, one of the most impressive shops I've ever been in my life. So Puddin' Creek, show us what you got at the auction. Okay, I got Tom's Beverly shear. He kept it razor sharp. It's the best cutting one I've ever used. And he built this cool 3-legged base for it. I also got this 1950 Olds rocket motor that Tom had evidently been saving for a long time. It was strapped to a pallet, and underneath the motor was a stack of Los Angeles Times newspapers from the 1970s that he'd, I guess, put underneath there to catch the oil. I also got this 1955 Olds rocket from Tom's auction. All right, let's make ourselves a little sketch, a little blueprint, if you will. We'll break out the trusty Brown & Sharp calipers, take a few measurements on the compound rest slot, and we'll make a brand new T-nut from scratch. All right, here's all the dimensions we should need to make it. Let's find ourselves a piece of cold rolled steel and saw off a chunk and get started. We'll deburr it on the grinder, and that way it sits nice and flat in the milling machine vise. Now we'll be making this part in our Bridgeport vertical milling machine using a 1/2 inch 4-flute end mill. The first thing we'll do is machine both saw cut sides flat and parallel to one another. Now we're looking for a finished width of 1 inch 150 thousandths. That's pretty doggone close. The next step is to machine the top flat and also square with the sides we just machined. And yes, I do have bigger cutters I could change out and machine this top all in one pass, but it's quicker sometimes just to use the cutter that's already in the machine, make a few passes, get it knocked out, and move on. Now the top is machined flat and machined perfectly square to the sides. It's time to start cutting the shoulders in. Make this thing look like a T-nut. Now I know all you machinists out there are saying, hey, Puddin' Creek, put some coolant or some lubrication on that end mill. You're going to burn it up. I hear you. Number one, though, I'm keeping the RPMs low to keep the heat down and not burn the end mill up. Number two, I want the viewers who don't get to see this on a regular basis to actually see the cutting tool doing its work. Time for a test fit. Oh, it fits perfect. Now the very last milling operation is just to machine both ends, flat and square, and to the final length. I use the same end mill. I just dropped it down and machined the ends square. Now we need to set the milling machine up to drill and tap the hole in the center of the T-nut. To do this, we're going to use an edge finder. I like to run an edge finder at about 800 RPM. What's the purpose of an edge finder? To accurately locate the edge of the part. Once we know the edge of the part, we can then dial over to accurately locate the center of the part. How do we know when we found the edge of the part? Well, when the two halves of the edge finder start running perfectly concentric, that's the edge of the part. Now we've located the edge of the part. We've moved the machine table over to be in the center of the part. We're ready to center drill the hole before we drill and tap. I'm running a center drill at about 1200 RPM. I'm going to use a 3/8 16 bolt in the center of this tool holder, so we need to tap a 3/8 16 thread in the T-nut. Tap drill size for a 3/8 16 tap is a 5/16 drill. Here's a 5/16. Let's get busy. You always want to use a little bit of cutting oil anytime you're drilling holes in steel, and you also want to stop with your down pressure feed every once in a while and let the chip break. Every time you stop pushing, the chip breaks, and that way you don't get super long stringy chips. Now I'm just going to use a countersink to countersink the hole before tapping. Let's head over to our tap index and look for a 3/8 16 tap. I applied a little bit of Tap Magic cutting fluid, and you'll also notice as I run this tap through the part, I'm going to stop and reverse the spindle every once in a while to break the chips. You don't want long stringy chips because those bind up in the hole, and that's what breaks taps off in metal. Well, there's the finished part. Looks pretty good. Let's clean it up, get a 3/8/16 bolt and a flat washer, put it all together, see if it works. Well, there it is. It fits like a glove. Now, this tool holder will allow me to use modern, preset, quick change dovetail tool holders, so I can set one up with a turning tool and a boring bar, all the different tools, and have them ready to go. This is really going to make this little lathe a pleasure to operate. This machine has a 6-inch swing. What does swing mean? It means you can chuck up a 6-inch diameter part and machine it, and the part will not hit the ways of the machine. It's also rated as 18 inches between centers. That means, theoretically, you can machine an 18-inch long shaft between centers. These machines were made for Sears by the Atlas Machine Tool Company. So basically, an Atlas 618 lathe is the exact same machine as this little Craftsman lathe. Atlas made all kinds of attachments for these lathes. Here's even a line drive attachment to run a lathe and a drill press off a gasoline lawnmower type engine. I wanted to protect the beautiful wood base that this guy made in 1972, so I went to my local restaurant supply store, and believe it or not, restaurant supply stores carry chip pans for Craftsman lathes. Who knew? All right, we've got the new chip pan in place. We've got the new tool holder installed. It's time to crank up the speeds and feeds on this little lathe, chuck up a bar of steel, and take a test cut and see what it will do. Listen to the snap of that guard door closing. Now that's American quality. Good googly moogly. Look at that thing throw chips. I mean, it cuts like a little CNC machine. Let's check out the surface finish and see how it did. Son, that finish is as fine as frog hair. All right, let's set up for test number 2. Let's try machining a long shaft. See how the little lathe does on that. I need to center drill the end of the shaft so we can run a live center in it to support the right hand end. I use this little chuck that came with the lathe, cute little fella. And I really should have a steady rest to run the shaft in to support this end of the shaft while I'm center drilling it. Unfortunately, the guy didn't order a steady rest for it in 1972. I'll keep an eye out on eBay and see if I can pick one up for it. This live center did not come with this lathe. This is just one I had in the shop that I'd been using on some other small lathes I have. Okay, let's give it a real test. This is 1 3/16 diameter steel. Let's take a cut on it and see what the little lathe does. Right off the bat, I hear a little bit of chatter, but other than the chatter, it's machining great. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I am completely blown away at how good this little lathe machines. I never owned one of these before, and I'd seen them in the catalogs when I was a kid. I always kind of thought they were just one step above a toy. But this machine is really basically just a little miniature South Bend lathe. They really work great. Now I notice the shaft is not cleaning up all the way around. That's probably due to the center drill. You saw how I had to center drill it with no steady rest. But we'll take a couple of passes and clean it up all the way around, and then we'll take a micrometer and check it out and see what kind of tolerance this little lathe will actually hold. Like I said, I heard a little bit of chatter on that last cut, so I'm going to look in the tool drawer here and see if I have a tool with a carbide insert with a smaller nose radius. Anytime you get chatter on a lathe, there's a couple of things you can do to fix it. One is switch to a smaller nose radius tool. Two is slow down the RPM, but I don't think I need to slow down the RPM any at all. So let's try this sharper nose radius and see if that cures the chatter problem. Much, much better. I don't hear any chatter at all this time. It's cutting great. All right, we'll take a 5/1000 deep finish pass, and then we're going to stop, get the micrometers out, and see how good this thing cuts. See what kind of tolerance it actually holds. Looks like this end measures 1 inch and 91 thousandths. Let's see what the other end looks like. I'm seeing 1 inch, 89.5 thousandths. That's an accuracy of 1.5 thousandths from end to end. I'll remind you, 1 thousandths is the size of a human hair. I am completely blown away by this 1972 Sears Craftsman lathe. Thank you guys for watching our channel. Leave us a comment if you like the video. Let us know how we're doing. And don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss all the cool videos we got coming up in the future.